Hello YouTube, Oberst here. Haven't been on making videos for a long time, but here I am, I'm back again. And today I'm looking at World of Warships, one of the few online games that I play, the other being World of Tanks. Now, World of Warships is currently in closed beta. However, you can become a part of the beta by simply going to the World of Warships website, going to their online store and buying one of the premium ship packages that they've got on sale currently. And by buying any of those ship packages, premium ship packages, you can then get access to the closed beta test. Now, this is the current test right now is 3.1. They've added some armor. They've done some changes to the game to make armor a more valuable thing to have than what it was before, which in turn has changed some of the issues in terms of what shells you should use if you're in, say, a cruiser or a destroyer facing off against a battleship, where before you could pretty much fire anything and you would be able to penetrate the battleship armor. So the armor is a bit more realistic now. The armor actually has some meaning in the game. And that means that there's a lot of changes in how you should choose your ammunition for the various ship types. Also, with 3.1, as you may have seen on other videos done by other YouTubers like Jingles, for the American line, they finally added American battleships, which before 3.1 the American line did not have battleships. And for the Japanese, they added some aircraft carriers to their lines. Currently, still, it's just the Americans and the Japanese that have tech trees. Russia, you currently have 2 premium ships that you can buy in-game, with 1 premium ship that you can buy at the website, as I mentioned earlier. And Britain is represented by the battleship Warspite, which can also be bought in-game. In the American line, you have the Albany and the Atlanta as premium warships. And there is also a third one that doesn't show up here, but if you bought it at their store, the online store, it's the USS Sims, which is a Tier 7 American destroyer. The Russians have the Gremyashi, and I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, but she's a Tier 5 destroyer, actually a very good destroyer. And the Japanese have the Yubari that you can buy on the website as a Tier 4 cruiser. And in-game, the Japanese, you can buy the Kitakami. Now, you may notice here I've got Japanese naval imperial flags. That's because I'm using Aslain's World of Warship Modpack, which gives you the imperial naval flag on your ships rather than the Japanese national flag. For those of you that are into the history and like a little more realism, it's a great add-on. Another thing that you'll see today is one of the sighting aim gun sights, and there are several different ones in the mod pack that you can try out and use in the game. They are not aiming assist mods or aim bots by any means. They're just a different sight. You still have to judge enemy ship and speed for yourself. But today we're going to be looking at the Tier 2 American Premium Cruiser. I happen to prefer a lot of the older ships. I almost wish that Wargaming had started this game off in the late 1800s to include the ships that took part in the Spanish-American War, and especially the pre-dreadnought battleships and cruisers that took part in the Russo-Japanese War. There were a lot of great ships in that time period. And then, of course, getting into World War I, there were many, many great battle cruisers and dreadnoughts that were built before and during World War I that I would love to see in game, and I'm sure we will see a few of them. But since this game goes into the Second World War, you won't see as many of the First World War offerings. So that's kind of a shame when it's a 10-tier game. I'm sure they will bring out other lines eventually and maybe have branch-off lines and things like that to allow for more of the ships in the game. So I am looking forward to that. However, today we're looking at the USS Albany, which is a Tier 2 protected cruiser. She was actually not built or designed in the United States, and this at a time when the United States was very much building and designing their own warships. The story behind USS Albany is that she was originally designed and built in Great Britain by the Armstrong Whitworth Company for the Brazilian Navy. Brazil contracted Armstrong Whitworth to design a protected cruiser class for their burgeoning Navy at a time when South America was pretty much getting into its own little naval arms race. You had a lot of newly created countries as the various South American countries and Central American countries got their freedom from Spanish rule. And they were all vying for their own navies. However, while Brazil initiated this building program of 4 protected cruisers, she found that she really could not afford to have them all. So she only accepted delivery of the first ship to be launched out of the group, and immediately the other 3 were offered for sale, put up for sale while they were being built in Britain. Chile bought one of them, and with this being now 1897, 1898, America was on the verge of war with Spain. The American consulate in Britain sent back reports to the United States on the availability of these ships, and of course the United States Navy was concerned that Spain might purchase the remaining 2 warships and use them against the United States. So to head that off, the Navy was authorized by the United States government to purchase the last 2 ships, and they became the USS New Orleans and the USS Albany, and they were even given a class name. They were called the New Orleans class protected cruisers. New Orleans was launched in time to take part in the Spanish-American War, and she continued to see service in the United States Navy up through the First World War. The Albany, however, was launched too late to see service in the Spanish-American War. By that time, that conflict was over. However, with the end of the Spanish-American War, after America had granted Cuba independence, the United States decided to keep both the Philippines and Puerto Rico as American protectorates. this had a very bad backlash in the Philippines, where the Filipino people had expected to gain their independence once Spain had been defeated. And so since that did not happen, it instigated a new conflict, the Philippine-American War. So USS Albany was sent first to the Philippines to take part in that conflict, and after that was ended, she took her place with America's Asiatic fleet, protecting American interests in the Far East. She also saw some service along the Pacific West Coast of the United States, being a frequent visitor to both San Francisco and the Southern California coast, Santa Monica as well. She saw service as a convoy escort in the First World War, and in 1922 she was finally considered obsolete, and she was put into reserve and was eventually broken up in 1930. The New Orleans had already been scrapped, I believe in 1922, 1923. That's just off the top of my head there. But anyway, the Albany is a neat little ship in terms of the history of the United States Navy at the time that she was purchased, since America was really in the process of modernizing their ships, since we had found out that ships like the Monitor class that became real popular in the Navy by the end of the American Civil War, while they were great coastal ships, they were not seagoing vessels. They had such low freeboard that even though we did manage to send a Monitor across the Atlantic to Europe in 1866, that ship had to be escorted and was actually towed part way to Europe. And had she gotten into any kind of military action out on the high seas, she would have been useless, because with the freeboard as low as it was on Monitor type ships, the guns were too close to the sea, so in any kind of sea state above a flat calm, she couldn't really have used her guns with any effectiveness at all. So America had started to see that the Monitor class of ship really could not represent American interests beyond coastal defense. And other than that, the American Navy was very much behind the European powers, which had already started to build ironclad warships as early as 1859 with the launch of the French Glory and Britain's HMS Warrior in 1860-1861. So America was very much just burgeoning in building a modern Navy. And one of the people that was very instrumental in that was Theodore Roosevelt, who many of you will recognize the name, as he later on became President of the United States. However, at this time, he worked very much in the Naval Department. He ended up being Assistant Secretary of the Navy, and he advocated that America needed a strong Navy in order to take its place among the world powers. And so ships like the Albany represented that. In fact, when the United States fleet was sent on a round the world tour to display America's naval power to the rest of the world, the fleet was nicknamed the Great White Fleet. And as you can see in the livery here on Albany with the white hull and the beautiful scroll work that was put on the American ships at that time, she clearly represents that period in America's history when we were really starting to take our place as a naval power. So let's get underway here. We'll take Albany into battle, and as President Theodore Roosevelt would have said, bullet! Basically, the American Navy at that time represented the power of the United States. In fact, when Theodore Roosevelt made the famous comment of, "I may speak softly, but I carry a big stick," well, that stick was the United States Navy. So it's kind of late at night tonight, and so it's going to take us a little bit here to get into a game.
Battle starts.
Well, okay, we find ourselves pretty much in a Tier 2 game. The enemy looks to be a little bit better off than us with 2 Tier 3 cruisers. So we'll just have to see how we do here. Now, one of the downsides of the Albany is that while she does have 152 millimeter guns, which are pretty similar to the guns that you'll find on the Aurora and the Chester, which is a Tier 2 protected American cruiser. She does not have the range that they have. The range of her guns is less. And we're also up against an Aurora here, which has a very good range as well, plus the fact she can pretty much mount a broadside of about 8 guns on us. So this is going to be a tough game. So the best thing that I can do here is to try and join up with the rest of the fleet. Unfortunately, it looks like this is the one of the gun sites, by the way, that you can choose to use with Aslain's Modpack. And like I said, as you can see here, there is no aim assist. You still have to guess. But I like having these other lines that cross at various angles to help you plan your shots. Alright, here we have a destroyer, but he's still out of our range. just hate these islands? I know I do. Well, unfortunately, our Chester decided to run right into his torpedoes. And that's another thing about 3.1. You actually get better maneuverability with a lot of your ships. They turn a lot, even the battleships turn like sports cars now. Which means you really have to not be paying attention, or the destroyer has to be close enough to really nail you with torpedoes. Chester. I knew he launched torpedoes at me. Got him. Now I gotta turn around to help this guy out. And he's out of my range. But he's dead anyway, so that's good. But we're actually losing this game by the looks of things. And we're still facing all Tier 3 ships. So I don't have too much faith in winning this. Take this guy out and our Samson stays in good shape, we may have a chance. There we go. However, the ship I'm up against, if it's either the Aurora or the St. Louis, they both have double the broadside that I have. And with their range, we're really in trouble. I've got to hope I can close the range. But basically, we're 2 protected cruisers against 2 armored cruisers. I just don't know how we're going to pull this off. Oh, wow, we might. No. Alright, he's coming into range, and there we go. So now it's just... oh boy, here we go. Yes!
Cruiser sunk.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. I didn't think I'd pull that off. Not when he had double the broadside I had. I think he was using armor piercing because he didn't set me on fire and he didn't take out any of my guns. So I think he had gone to armored piercing, and that was lucky for me because what he didn't realize is that his shells were most probably, for the most part, going straight through my hull, in one side and out the other, which is what my armor-piercing shells would have done with him. So it was better to use the HE, even though I was hitting him midships, where armor piercing might have done a little more damage maybe if I had done that. But setting the fires and putting some guns out of commission was better, at least in my opinion. I felt it was better for me to try for that than to go for the AP and then maybe not do as much damage, having shells go through the hull instead of detonating inside of it. Like I say, at least even if my HE didn't penetrate his hull, with them detonating, I had a chance of knocking out his gun crews at his fore and aft guns, since they're unprotected. And it's one of the things that I like about the Albany, is it seems that even though the guns are pretty much out there on the deck, they have gun shields. They have splinter shields, and with that, it provides the crew with a bit more protection. Well, our Samson player was really good. He knew how to operate his destroyer. Give him that. He really did well. Looks like their Samson player wasn't half bad either. But there you go. That's the Albany. We did 19,438 points of HE damage. Now, I've seen a lot more AP damage done with the Albany, but that was in the previous patch of the game before 3.1, and since 3.1 I did try some AP, and against ships that aren't well armored, I wasn't doing as much damage. With a battleship, be different. If I was up against a battleship, I would definitely, at least the early battleships. If it was a tier 3 battleship, I'd most probably go to some AP. I've tried that and actually been able to pen the armor with the guns on the Albany. But overall, so far I've been finding HE to be a better choice, especially in these low tier games, since you're going to come across a lot of destroyers, and with the destroyers you really do need to use the HE rather than AP. Your shells will just go right through their hulls. Like I said earlier, with the St. Louis, I most probably could have shifted to AP ammunition, but like I say, he had double the broadside. He could lay 8 heavy guns on me in the broadsides there, not to mention his secondaries. And he wasn't doing that much damage to me, where really he should have, if he had been using HE, he would have sunk me easy. Had he switched to high explosive ammunition, I am sure I would have been toast in that game. He would have had me. But he was firing AP, and as you can see, he wasn't starting fires. He wasn't really taking out my guns. I think he did get a hit where I'll have to go back and look at the game, but I think he did get a hit where I had to repair. He did some damage to my engines, I think. But by using AP, the majority of his shells were just going through my hull in one side and out the other, and they weren't doing a lot of damage to me. They just weren't doing enough damage to sink me. Had he fired AG, he would have been penetrating my hull, and they would have been detonating in the hull and would have been causing a lot more damage to me than what I was actually getting from him. So, as you can see, that shows you how you really have to look at what ammunition type you're using versus the ship you're firing at. But as you can see here, with like I say before, the guns on Albany are all well protected. There are gun shields for the crew to hide behind, which I think helps out against shrapnel from the HE shells. And the guns just are overall, even the secondary battery, they have gun shields, and they're behind the armored hull bulwark here. And even the large guns here at the side have an additional bulwark in front of the gun. Whereas if you look at the comparable Chester, which is one reason why I like to use HE when I'm playing the Albany, when I come across a Chester like this here, you can see the guns are completely unprotected, completely out in the open. The gun crews have nowhere to hide. So when you're using HE on this vessel, any hits here on the decks, you're going to be taking out the gun crews and perhaps the gun itself, because there's just nothing here. And with St. Louis, you have the same issue with the fore and aft guns. Gun here and the gun over here, they have no gun shield. Also, you notice the secondary guns, if you shoot HE around these port openings here, or the secondary battery here, you're going to knock out these guys as well with HE. And if you're lucky and get an HE round in there, then it's really going to cause some damage. HE can also mess up these guns here, these casemate guns here. Even though this area of the ship is well armored, HE can damage the pivot that the guns are mounted in, the sponsons that the guns are mounted in. The HE can damage those, so you can put these out of action. But there you go. That's our quick look at the USS Albany at Tier 2. I will do some other videos on some of the other ships in the game. I've got ships as far up as Tier 8 that we can look at. And we will take a look at all of these ships, and I'll give you some little tidbits of history on each one. And hopefully my videos will improve over time. So thank you for watching, and look forward to doing this again real soon. Take care, everybody.